Hello again, welcome back inside the Tier 4 studio here in Morgantown, West Virginia. And for the Charleston Daily Mail, I am Mike Casaza, and you are here once again for our Wednesday walkthrough, the weekly feature in advance of West Virginia University's upcoming football game. And we have a pretty interesting one Saturday, 3:30 p.m. ESPNU in Baltimore, Maryland, home of the Ravens, not the Maryland Terrapins. It is West Virginia playing a road game against the Maryland Terrapins. WVU is 2-1. Maryland 3-0 for the first time since 2001. Probably not that impressive when you think about it because West Virginia has dominated that series recently, 7 years in a row, so that is one reason that Maryland has not been 3-0 for so long, but they will not complain. They've been off to a very good start offensively and defensively, but before we consider any of their statistical achievements, some sort of Herculean task, let's also remember their competition. Old Dominion, a team just like Georgia State, was FCS last year, is FBS this year. Not very deep, not very good. That scholarship thing is a hard gap to close going from 63 to 85. They, like Georgia State, need time. They've also played FIU, a team that might actually belong in the FCS if this keeps up, and UConn, which, well, I already used that joke. Maybe the same applies to what the Huskies are trying to do this year. That said, you can't really sneeze at what the Terrapins have done. C.J. Brown, a very good quarterback, has engineered this offense that has gone from 120 out of 120 in total yards last season to number 10 this year. He has a pair of games where he's passed for 200 and rushed for 100 yards. He has two excellent receivers, maybe as good as WV will see all season, in Stephon Diggs and Dion Long. Stephon Diggs, obviously the comparisons with Tavon Austin because they both wear number 1. They're both from Baltimore. They're both electric in the return game. They're hard to ignore. Dana Holgorsen says that Diggs is probably a better playmaker down the field. Dion Long, you remember, committed to West Virginia, went to a prep school, came to West Virginia, wasn't happy, left, had his transfer blocked, went out west and played for Mike Loxley in New Mexico, then went to a junior college, set the all-time junior college record with 100 receptions last year, about 1,500 yards and 25 touchdowns. Really Stedman Bailey kind of numbers when you think about it. His quarterback, by the way, was Jake Waters, who was at Kansas State. A real task for West Virginia's defensive front to have good gap integrity against the zone reads that C.J. Brown will run, and also for the cornerbacks and even the deep safeties to keep an eye on those receivers and make sure they just don't get smoked on national television. What of the Maryland defense? Brian Stewart, first-year offensive coordinator, has things going in an aggressive manner. Again, they feasted on some inferior competition, but 14 sacks in 3 games, that leads the country. Marcus Whitfield, linebacker, 4.5 sacks, leads the country. Yannick Cujo-Martin, I believe is how you pronounce that one, has 4 sacks. So 2 of the top 5 in the country in sacks. They play defense for the Terrapins. How does West Virginia counteract that? Well, probably want to pick on the cornerbacks. Maryland's 2 starters are out. West Virginia needs to defuse the pressure against Maryland. Maryland's going to blitz. They're going to twist up front, use stunts, try to confuse Ford Childress. So take some shots deep. Maybe you can use your height or speed advantage against some smallish, inexperienced cornerbacks. Also, the running game going to be important. We saw Ford Childress do a lot of play action stuff successfully. He'd like to be able to bring the defense even further out and open some room behind them, give Ford Childress some time and maybe a pocket on those fakes, let him pass. But I'd like to point out one thing we haven't seen last week that we probably will see again, the return of the screen game. Maryland, not unlike Oklahoma, they're going to load the box, they're going to play a lot of man-to-man, they're going to blitz and pressure. I do wonder how much man, though, they'll play with the young and inexperienced corners, but they're going to bring 6, 7 people regularly. If you're going to come up the field like that, let them in the front door and sneak out the back with the screen passes. They were pretty close to popping a few of those against Oklahoma. It's a great way to break the habits of a defense. If they're going to blitz and blitz and blitz, use it to your advantage. Get behind them, let the defensive line and linebackers through, and run away from them as you get past the defensive backs who hopefully your offensive linemen and your receivers can block. Special teams, though, is again going to be an interesting thing. Diggs is dangerous, and West Virginia, I don't want to say has been living dangerously. They did a very good job against Georgia State's Albert Wilson, but this is probably going to be a game where field position is important because these defenses seem like they're up to task. One is going to be challenged, I think, against the threat of deep balls by West Virginia, maybe the running game, and then the other is going to be challenged by the outside receivers and the running quarterback of Maryland. But limit the big plays. Maybe a punt isn't a bad thing sometimes. Use of field position. That's going to make the punting game popular for the coaches. And I think if you can keep Diggs boxed in, not let him break one there, not let that crowd get going, that's a good thing. If West Virginia can keep a lid on that, maybe their defense answers some questions about who they are. And in the end, maybe you connect with one over top and get that much sought after big play from the receivers on that side of the ball. Good game. I think if early in the season you had circled one game to see how your team was going to turn out, the fate of your expectations largely attached to this game. So it should be a neat contest there, a rivalry that is going to be rekindled here and hopefully live on for many more years as Dana Holgorsen looks to keep these regional matchups going. But who would have thought, though, that Maryland would come in as the offensive team and West Virginia would come in as a team maybe talked about a little bit less in that regard. Maybe a different conversation Saturday night. Only one way to find out. We'll see you there.